Alrighty, welcome back to Shut Up and Ball. Excuse me if you hear my dog in the background. That's IRL timing. I'm gonna keep going though. I'm Aaron Chow, accompanied by my co-host John Harris, my real co-host, not my dog in the background if you heard that. But we're back to share our thoughts, reactions, and such to a very interesting week 6 of the NFL season. As I'll get into the standings here in a second, but overall wise, at least our spreads. It was a big week for the favorites. Only huge one week. Underdog. Yeah. One underdog prevailed, and they didn't sound like they won. They just covered. So big week for the favorites. Tough week. Even though, once again, I'm saying tough week for Vegas. I imagine Vegas is fine. The house always wins, is what they always say. But anyway, yeah, very interesting week of football that we got to go over. So, let's get into it. The standings-wise, obviously 14 games last week. Long story short, it was John's week in a sense. You did better against the spread, just straight record wise. You had 9. You went 9-5. I went 7-7. So as of now, let me double check the maths right here. Yes. So as of now, you are 1 game ahead of me. You're at 42-50 on the year. I had to adjust the spreadsheet because last week I said we both went 6-10. We both went 6-8. I forgot. There's only 14 games, so I miscounted there. And I went 7-7, and classic fashion split down the middle. So, ironically, our difference-wise, actually, we didn't split, obviously. So, and then money-wise, John, you went positive. We both went positive. That's something we haven't had in a couple of weeks, but you went more positive. You were plus 860 for the week. Obviously, your 2 Sunday and Monday night big bets of 300 on the Bengals and 200 on the Bills covered. And cashing greatly there at the end. So kudos to you there. I was at plus 800. So once again, close second, but chipping away at the lead.
We may not have split, but I do think it's absolutely hilarious that we had some big swings in terms of the bets, and both of our big swings went our ways. Like, you had the 300 on Tampa Bay. I only had 100. You gained 200 there on me. We had the 500-point swing on the Detroit-Dallas game, but then there's the 400-point swing on the Cincinnati game and the 300-point swing on the Buffalo. So it's just hilarious that although we don't split, in all the games that we bet big on either side, we got them right because we were on the opposite sides of these huge bets. And it basically made it so sure, I technically did better by 60 points. So, there wasn't really ground made up in that one, at least.
And some of them, we'll go through all the games, of course. But some of them could have very much well gone a different way. And who knows how the week would have shaken up. If went that flip, this funny ball that is football bounced a different way in some of these games. But anyhow, let's dive into it. Of course, as always, starting with the Thursday night game. It was a big game within the NFC West, and in regards to this one, this was our first difference. You got it right. Although I think I was playing more points at the time, but nonetheless, the San Francisco 49ers, despite losing Jordan Mason in this game and midway towards the end of the first half, didn't matter. They still prevail over the Seahawks, 36-24 here. What were your thoughts in regards to what felt like a long time ago, but the 49ers getting back on track here in regards to their division race as well?
I'm pretty sure the one thing I really specifically mentioned too when I picked the Niners was it feels like George Kittle always just tears them a new one. And sure, he only had 5 catches for 58 yards, but he scored 2 touchdowns. So I'm going to take a little victory lap on that one, that George Kittle did in fact have a great game and do what I expected him to do. Luckily for me, Jordan Mason, as I was facing him in multiple fantasy leagues, didn't have a great day. He was having a great day.
He started off like a third with his big run, 38 yards, and I was looking like, oh no.
Yeah, but then he got injured, unfortunately for him. But it's the Niners, and I have no doubt. Once again, I genuinely do not care who plays running back for them. Obviously McCaffrey, he's a huge difference maker. But the Niners scheme, they can get production out of anybody. Now they're not going to have all the magical moments that a CMC can get, but they can get production out of anybody. And we saw that with Isaac Guerrero having that 176-yard run. So he was able to get some stuff going on the ground in Jordan Mason's absence. Brock Purdy had a great game. He looked solid against the Seahawks. They had some good explosive plays, specifically that one from not Ayuk, but from Deebo Samuel that went for over 70. And then defensively, I think that was really the reason that the Niners actually came away with this one because sure they scored 36, but I think they played, a solid day where Seattle was behind the eight ball immediately coming out of the gates, and they forced him to be one dimensional. They shut down the run game early against Kenneth Walker and didn't allow him because he's kind of been the lifeblood of the offense at points for the Seahawks. They didn't allow him to ever become that impact player that he can be at any point in the game. So they kind of took him out of it. And then they also really sort of disrupted the receiver room for the Seahawks. DK Metcalf, 11 targets. He had 3 catches. Like, that's crazy. Tyler Lockett, 8 targets, only 4 catches. So Jackson Smith and Jigba, 9 targets, only 5. Like, they forced these guys to be inefficient. And the result of that was a lot of dump offs to Kenneth Walker. He had 8 catches on 8 targets. A lot of, small stuff over the middle to Noah Fant. He had 6 targets for 6 catches. They were forcing other guys to beat them. And there was also, they were opportunistic. They recovered a fumble. They intercepted Geno Smith multiple times. So, although the scoreboard says they gave up 24 points, the Niners defense was fantastic in this one because a lot of those points, it was late in the game when they were trailing, and it was rather inconsequential for the most part, outside of that minor moment in the third quarter where it looked like maybe the Seahawks are coming back in this one after that kick return from LaVisca. But then the Niners offense responded. So just a great game all around, I think, from the 49ers. They played well. The only concern I think we're starting to have with the Niners would maybe be health. Obviously McCaffrey, he's been out for some time. Now Jordan Mason gets banged up. You just got Debo and Kittle and some of these guys back. And, we just, you don't want the Niners to all of a sudden start getting and doing what they do a lot of these previous years, which is all of a sudden guys start getting injured. So as long as they can kind of come away from this one and kind of get everybody back in shape and going, then I think they'll be fine. They're back in a rhythm, it seems.
Yeah, I concur. Mostly what I'm going to say here is just Seattle, like you alluded to, I think the big issue, and we prefaced this in the previous weeks, they've kind of gone away with it, but yeah, being one-dimensional with their new offense. I looked it up last time. Let me just double check. But I know Ryan Grubb, he's their offensive coordinator, new offensive coordinator as of this year. And yeah, I think he's just a little too pass happy at times. And granted, they were behind the 8 ball in this game, like you mentioned, but still, this is another game where, I know we're both kind of very higher than maybe most on Geno Smith. Nonetheless, Geno Smith does not need to be throwing 52 times, right? Dropping back and throwing. And one thing that doesn't include the sacks and such as well. So, or you only got sacked once, but still. They got to have a little bit more to their offense, and it is very aggressive too, which I like. And we saw earlier in the season worked, but now as teams have adjusted, it's okay, you got to do a little bit more. You can throw DK Metcalf a creative screen, or even Jack Smith and Jigba. We saw it a couple of weeks ago where they force fed him as well, and were able to get him a lot of targets. So they got to figure that out. Defensively, there's a bit of concern as well, considering. They weren't really able, like you alluded to, the Niners were still able to run at an efficient clip, and Brock Purdy was still pretty good as well and was able to make plays. And like you mentioned, Kittle still killed them, and Dio had that big play. And I know Ayuk had a quiet game, but he didn't really need to do anything for the most part. Like you said, the Niners were in control most of the way here. So, just kind of a tough loss for Seattle because, like we mentioned, they really could have put themselves ahead and gotten some big cushion here. Now they're kind of figuring things out, and hopefully their defense can get healthier. I know they've lost a couple of key pieces. Their rookie Byron Murphy, he's been in and out and such, and then obviously still getting used to that new system. But a little disappointing result from Seattle because, like you mentioned, even then their offense technically only scored 17 points because 7 of those came off a kick return. So a lot of concern, especially on the other 2 phases for Seattle that they got to figure out. And always tough just to lose at home as well. So, I got nothing else to add in regards to that. I think you hit most of the points in regards to the Niners, I guess you could say, dominance and, like I said, in control for most of this game. So, good for them. They get the Thursday night win and kind of the mini bye going to the following week because the Niners schedule does get a bit tougher. Chiefs, Cowboys, Bucks, Seahawks again, and then Packers, Bills, and then Bears, and then Rams, and then from here on out, it could be, man. And then Dolphins could be tough. I know it's like I'm going all the way into December at this point, but I'm literally reading down the list. And then Lions are no easy out on the day before New Year's Eve. So there you go. Like the gauntlet kind of begins here. I know they have a bye week after Dallas, so we'll see. But nonetheless, crucial win for the Niners, like we mentioned. They go to 3-3, and I don't have the division standings in bed up on my. Let me just do that right now. But I believe that puts them at least tied for the division. Let me see. Of course, it's at the bottom, and my scroll wheel's not working. Okay. Yeah. As of right now, I think they are on top of the division. So we'll see how that all pans out going ahead. But let's move on over to the Sunday games. Now we go to the London game. And unfortunately for the Jaguars, not only are they staying another week after this loss, but yeah, they lost pretty badly here. Bears kind of dominate 35-16 in London over the Jaguars. What were your thoughts here, John, in regards to the Bears kind of continuing this hot streak they've been on?
I'll talk about the game real quickly because then I want to talk about something surrounding Jacksonville. But on the game itself, Caleb Williams he's getting better and better every single week. The thing I really loved about him in this game was the fact that it wasn't DJ Moore, which we saw it was last week. DJ Moore was the guy who kills the other team. In this one, we saw Cole Kmet and Keenan Allen get involved. We saw even Rome Odunze had a nice big explosive play. DeAndre Swift is continuing to actually show up, and that's huge because once again the first 3 weeks he was terrible, and now he's really started to find a groove. So Chicago's offense seems like it's coming together. The run game is now working. Caleb Williams, even in this one, you know how I said the thing about how I think Kyler Murray needs to run more. Caleb ran in this one. I think he needs to run more personally. Because once again, when a quarterback runs, it just forces the defense to think about it. Every single moment that there's a hole in that pocket, those linebackers are going to think twice about it, and that can open stuff up even if you don't take off. So I like that he was using his legs, and the Chicago defense continues to look really impressive. They completely shut down the Jacksonville run game. ETN got hurt; he got taken out basically immediately. Which that whole situation seems ridiculous. I don't know what's going on with this injury with ETN, but it seems like 3 weeks in a row we keep putting the guy out there, and then the injury happens again. So it's like maybe we should rest him. I don't know, like take him out of game or something. Which seemingly it might be what they're going to do moving forward, but I don't know. But even then, like Tank Bigsby couldn't get anything going on the ground, so Jacksonville's offense was once again putrid. They had to throw the ball a ton, and it was okay, but it wasn't good enough. So anyway, it was too little, too late. So that's the game. By the way, shout out Evan Ingram, came back from injury, had a heck of a day, 10 catches for 102 yards. Goes to show how important he is to that offense. And it does feel like when Trevor Lawrence has been at his best was when both Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk were out there cooking. So I'm not saying that this is going to change their season, but I am optimistic for the future of the offense, at least in the passing attack, when you have the three-headed monster of Ingram, Kirk, and Brian Thomas Jr. out there together, because this is the first time we saw it. Evan Ingram obviously killed it. And I think that with Kirk and Thomas Jr., the way they've been playing on the season, the way Kirk's played historically, I think that could be something to look forward to. So that's what I want to say on the game. I think we need to have a conversation about Doug Peterson, because the Jaguars are now sitting at 1-5. He's been here how long? How long has Doug Peterson been their coach? 3 years?
This is year 3.
This is year 3. And in those years, they pretty sure that they made the playoffs his first season, correct? And that was the year they
came back against the Chargers.
They had the brutal first half where Lawrence throws 4 picks, and then the second half he throws 4 touchdowns. They get the comeback win against the Chargers for that playoff win. So they had that. That was that year. Last year, they started off fine and then kind of collapsed, and then at some point just couldn't get it going, and they lost the division lead, and the Texans took over, and they missed the playoffs. And now this year, they're 1-5. So it's gotten worse and worse every single season, despite the fact that their owner, Shad Khan, has stated this is the best roster. Prior to the season, he said this is the best roster they had ever built for the Jacksonville Jaguars. There was reason to believe that statement because you've got a young Trevor Lawrence, you've got ETN, you drafted Brian Thomas Jr., who a lot of people, including you and I, were very high on. You have, some ascending defensive pieces like Josh Hines Allen. He's obviously a great defensive end. You've got Devin Lloyd in the linebacker core, Tyson Campbell out at corner. You have why am I blanking on his name? The other defensive end
Trayvon Walker, who you took number 1 overall.
Yeah,
a couple of years ago.
Overall, like you've got a lot of interesting pieces, right? I think the only main concern was really maybe some of the pieces of the secondary, and maybe some of the pieces of the offensive line, and maybe the interior of the defensive line. But like even then, once again, it felt like there was so much that was going to go right in terms of talent that it felt like you could overcome some of maybe those weak points, right? And yet here the Jaguars are at 1-5. The offense is completely anemic. The run game lacks all explosiveness outside of like the occasional bomb to Brian Thomas Jr. where he makes a huge play happen, or like the 3 huge Tank Bigsby runs that have happened on the year. But other than that, like the offense is just pretty pitiful. The only games in which they've been competitive in were games in which either their offense was terrible, but their defense showed up, or their defense was terrible, like last week against the Colts, but their offense showed up. And those were games that they lost. So they can't even win the close ones. I don't know. I just think there needs to be a conversation about Doug Peterson because he's talking about a culture change needs to happen after this previous game. He's made some comment about Andre Sisco quitting on a play, so now we're starting to blame individual players, which I'm all for accountability, but saying it in the media publicly when you're 1-5 as a team doesn't feel like a great look. I don't know. It just seems like this Jags team has too many core pieces that you can be building around that should be doing a lot better than they are, realistically. And when you have a team like, for example, that Vikings team, right? That we did say they were frauds when they won the 14 games. But when you win that many close games, you got to give credit to coaching. Because when you're in a lot of tough, games like that, and you manage to keep finding a way to win, there's something to say about that. And we see maybe that Vikings team was better than we give them credit for. Because now, with lesser talent, look at what the Vikings are doing, right? Meanwhile, the Jaguars seem to be the opposite. They can't win these close games. And I think that Doug Peterson, I'm not saying he needs to be fired right now, but all I'm going to say is Robert Saleh just lost his job after losing a game in London. Doug Peterson just lost one in London to a rookie quarterback, and they're going to play another rookie quarterback in the New England Patriots this upcoming week, once again in London. If they lose that game, I'm going to say right here, right now, Doug Peterson needs to be fired. Because after that game, they play your Green Bay Packers, they play the Philadelphia Eagles in a primetime slot, they play the Minnesota Vikings, they play the Detroit Lions, they play the Houston Texans. That is 5 brutal games following that Patriots game. The rest of the season, they play the Titans twice, they play the Raiders, they play the Jets, they play the Colts. So like the end of the year is not the toughest. But that 5-game stretch, if they lose to the Patriots, they're sitting at 1-6, and I see no reason why after those 5 games, outside of the fact that it's the NFL and it's a competitive league and upsets happen, I would see no reason why they would be favored to come out of that 5-game stretch as anything other than 1-11. And I think you cut bait early, you culture change now. We don't sit here and continue this conversation about Doug Peterson when it's very clear that they're outmatched against bad teams, and I see no reason once again against those 5 teams that anything would change. So, yeah.
Oh, I agree. Like, if obviously wholeheartedly, I've kind of already alluded to that previously. We've talked about plenty about how stagnant the offense is. You already mentioned it, but also especially like tying plays together, the run and play action, they're not very great at that. And regardless, like even if you look at their drive chart, like it shows like how, like you're alluding to, how anemic their offense is, or just both sides of the ball. I'm not even blaming the offense because, I mean, there's a stretch there, Bears score, make it 7-3, and now it's like, that was in the second quarter. Then for the rest of the second quarter, the Jags literally go, my screen just went weird, literally go 3 and out every time they get the ball. And except for one time where Caleb threw a pick, oddly enough, to Andre Sisco made the play. The other 2 drives, the Bears scored. So, the Jags opened the second half with a fumble on the first play. That was Evan Ingram fumble, and then from there it's basically night night. It's 21-3, and we've mentioned it last year with Staley. Hey, sometimes all these mistakes, all these things, they're kind of indicative of the head coach and what I guess whatever they're bringing to the table. We saw what happened with Staley, and it just feels like the writing's on the wall because, like you said, there's talent here. We've mentioned, and it's not like amazing talent like maybe some of the top tier teams, but like you said, it's better than the Vikings, better than a good handful of teams on this roster, and it just hasn't gone together. They just paid Trevor Lawrence big money, and I will say too, not just Trevor, but and regardless, Trevor's not been great. Let's just say that too. But granted, a lot of things have not gone right for them. Their defense feels like it's gotten worse over the past couple of years, even though in theory it should have been better because it's still a relatively young defense. Like you just mentioned, some of the pieces there. I think, I don't know the status going forward, but I'm with you. Like if they somehow lose that game against the Patriots, you have to hit the reset button to kind of put everyone on notice. Yeah, all the players and such, not just getting rid of Doug Pearson, getting an early track on the next head coaching carousel for the offseason. But you got to do something because while I do agree with that statement that their owner said, outside of the only other Jacksonville team that I could say will rival this one in terms of talent was that amazing defense that they had with Ramsey and them when they rode Leonard Fournette his rookie year. That's the only other team, at least Jaguars roster, that I can say okay, maybe could rival this one talent wise. But it's been very disappointing. And I don't know what the heck's going on with ETN. Obviously the injury stuff, and then it's not a good sign when, like you said, I think you made the good point where it's gotten worse every year in terms of results. And now they're sitting here at 1-5 when this was supposed to be a year where everyone felt that they should be back. Trevor Lawrence dealt with some injuries last season. Now he's fully healthy. He's not injured right now. So, I don't know. And Doug Peterson's supposed to be an offensive guy, so especially it's not good when when the offense is struggling. Also, at least with Robert Saleh, there was a caveat that hey, the defense is at least living up to their job, but with the head coach, you're responsible for all phases. So, it's definitely the seed is on fire right now for Doug Peterson, and like you said. We'll see what happens, but nonetheless, this is a very just disappointing results, not just this week, but previous weeks that we've seen from Jacksonville. So, I mean, the only one thing I want to say is kudos to the Bears, like you mentioned. They're on the opposite trend where it started off not great, and now they've been, like you mentioned, getting better. They've incorporated DeAndre Swift more. He's been looking great, and on a day where DJ Moore, I think he got an injury. I don't know, at one point in the game, but he got injured. Didn't matter. Like you said, these once again other talent. They getting Cole Kmet involved, Keenan Allen, and obviously their defense is awesome too. So, just I don't know the solution. I'm sure neither do you for the Jaguars, but it seems like there's really only you just got to wait and see, I guess, and hope that New England can be a springboard. Maybe if they win that one, then maybe that can get them the confidence they need going forward. But they got a gauntlet ahead, and could be darker days. Sorry, Jaguars fans, but could be dark days ahead in regards to Doug Peterson's tenure. But anything else you want to throw in or add there?
No.
Yeah, I mean, all right. So we'll see if they can turn it around. Meanwhile, the Bears, and we'll talk about the rest of the division, but the Bears 4-2. So kind of starting to get hot and, maybe starting to meet those expectations, the lofty expectations that some had put out there for them. But kudos to them getting it done overseas. Jags also staying in London for an extra week. So we'll see. That may be a good or bad thing. We'll see how that affects them in that upcoming game next week. But let's move on over to what was a more exciting game, one of the more exciting games of the early slate on Sunday. And at least it lived up to the hype, as it was the Baltimore Ravens. They took care of business, beating the Washington Commanders 30-23 in a game of it felt like Lamar is the current, but Jane Daniels, although he's been balling this year, he's quote unquote the future. Two very similar style guys here. Nonetheless, though, John, Ravens prevail. What were your thoughts in regards to the Ravens victory here?
After a disastrous 0-2 start, the Ravens have clearly turned it around, and it's you got to give credit to Derrick Henry because a lot of people wrote him off, I potentially myself included.
I did too.
But sorry, what?
I did too.
I mean, you did. I think you left him out of your top 5 on the running back
I
list.
left him on my top 5.
I
That's
didn't
tough.
go quite that far, but I did think he was declining, and Ned talked about maybe after this year he'd be already off of it. But so anyway, but he's been fantastic for them. Once again, another just monster game against Washington. Unfortunately for Washington, Jonathan Allen did get hurt, and I don't know the exact status of the injury.
I think
but
he's done for the season. Torn pec.
Yeah, so he's done. And so that didn't help that injury happened. But yeah, Derrick Henry had a great day. Lamar, once again, doesn't have to do too much through the air. The big thing for me is that it seems like Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman, their two receivers, are really starting to come into their own on the year because it felt like earlier in the season, which part of it was because they didn't have to throw. But they weren't really throwing the ball pretty much at all, it felt like, outside of like that Chiefs game where Likely went crazy. But now this is 2 weeks in a row in which Zay Flowers has had a fantastic performance. Rashad Bateman has had really good games as well. And so I'm excited to see what the Ravens offense can be as they seem to be a lot more balanced with that going for them. So yeah, the Ravens just playing good football for Washington. Once again, at some point, the perfect football that they were playing was going to come crashing down. I think a lot of it was maybe related to the fact that they don't have Brian Robinson. So they really couldn't do anything on the ground game with Eckler. I would have liked to maybe see them try to get somebody else a little bit more involved. I mean, Eckler's a solid back, but at this point, I don't think he's like the workhorse you want to be getting the most amount of carries on the team. And ultimately, when Jaden Daniels tried to run too, Baltimore, like I figured they were going to be defensively, is just really good when it comes to bottling up running quarterbacks. I think even on the broadcast, I heard that they were like the best defense against the run, specifically with quarterbacks. Which is not surprising, once again, when you play against Lamar Jackson every single week. So, yeah, I don't really have too much to say about either team. Like, Washington didn't turn the ball over, just couldn't really get the ground game going, and defensively wasn't able to stop the ground game from the Ravens. And so it very much was a game in which the Ravens, like, it played into their hands. This is what they want to do. This is how they want to play football. They want to run the ball. They want to have the lead, and that's how they want to play. And that's how it happened. Washington was competitive throughout. Just I think if they clean up some of the defensive mistakes against the run there, who knows? Maybe they win that one. And yeah, honestly, good game for both teams. It was a good one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to mention much more about Washington. Like you mentioned, like tough that they didn't have Brian Robinson. And that has been key to their success early on, is having him as kind of, like you said, dude, as the workhorse guy. Because, yeah, obviously, like you said, Eckler, I concur. Like he's third down, change of pace, obvious passing situation, type guy right now. That's what he's always excelled at, but especially at this point in his career, he's not, doing a lot between the tackles. Only one thing to add in regards to Baltimore, you mentioned the balance. Like we're loving that, and also like in addition to that, I mentioned a couple weeks ago, and they've definitely been expanded upon it, but doing a lot more under center to kind of get Derrick Henry in the run game going, because we all know anyone that's been watching Derrick Henry is the key is you got to get him. He's got to get ahead of steam, and once he does, it's tough to do so. And as we saw the past few weeks, they've been doing that a lot of Lamar under center, and I think it's helped too in regards to their play action game, of course, because I mean Lamar's just awesome in that already because of the dual threat ability, but it's obviously starting to pay off and pay dividends because now they're setting up Zay Flowers. Even Mark Andrews got involved in this game a little bit, had a couple of big plays at least. So yeah, Baltimore kind of hitting their stride here. I'm still a little bit worried about their defense, but like you mentioned, at least, and this is a key for a lot of teams, at least they're good at something. You want to be good at something, so then maybe you can build off that. So like I said, they're good. They showed obviously this game, and I think in recent games too, like even against the Bills and such, very good against the run, especially against mobile quarterbacks, which most elite teams are going to have a dual threat type guy anyway. So yeah, very good on the Ravens, and yeah, like despite the tough start, which once again it was a tough start. Like they played the Chiefs week 1, and the Raiders kind of caught them by surprise, bet at home. But since then they've kind of flipped that switch, and yeah, I mean, granted, it doesn't get easier. They got the Bucks at Tampa Bay next week, and then the Browns. Okay, that's a little bit easier. So, but who knows? Division games, but. Yeah, just big win for the Ravens. Now they are atop the AFC North. I don't think that they were going into this week. I'm not sure. But regardless, it's showing us now that they are. So, yeah, just getting hot at the right time, and we'll see if they can keep this up. Because sometimes, at least big picture wise, I feel like it's a little better to catch your stride at the end of the season. But who knows? Maybe they can keep adding more and more as the season goes on. But yeah, great win for Baltimore. Tough loss for the Commanders, but at least it was a good. We're not into moral victories here, but at least they were competitive. It was maybe they may feel a little bit better after this one, even though it was a loss. They probably feel bad about that, but they'll feel better. Like, hey, we can hang with the elite. At least we're not complete frauds like some other teams that I'm sure were mentioned and have mentioned before. So I guess we'll go to one of those frauds. They've been killed by injuries. As we'll go on to the next game, unless there's anything else you wanted to mention on this one.
Nope.
All right, let's go to the next one. The frauds I was referring to are the Saints, because after this amazing 2-0 start, it's kind of all crashed down. Granted, it was Spencer Rattler's first start, so maybe you cut them some slack. But the Tampa Bay Buccaneers absolutely dominated them on Sunday, 51-27. I mean, I know Baker says Baker threw 3 picks. I'll just mention this real quick. I think I know at least 2 of them were off deflection, so not really on Baker per se, and not that it mattered in the grand scheme of things, because obviously the Bucs were in control. But what were your thoughts here, John, in regards to the Bucs just domination of the Saints?
On the Saints and the fraud comment. I mean, listen, the first 2 games they played the Panthers, which is like self-explanatory, and then the Cowboys, and like if. The reason that I think a lot of people got hyped on that one was the expectations for the Cowboys were relatively high. But as we've seen on the year so far, Cowboys defense is there's a lot of weaknesses. It's porous, and sure, it was a little different this week, which we'll get in that game later due to injuries. But then compared to like that Saints one, but the Cowboys defense is giving up a lot of points, and so maybe basically I'm saying They've started to play a step up in competition, and this is the result. And so, Tampa was able to do pretty much whatever they wanted. Even Mike Evans, who he has the terrible battles right with Lattimore. I thought compared to some of his previous games with Lattimore, the fact that he had that 22-yard catch, I was like, okay. Because I didn't expect Mike Evans to do anything in this game. I've seen this man go against Marshall Lattimore and have 0 catches. So, he had that play, but then Chris Godwin absolutely cooked him. Sean Tucker and Bucky Irving absolutely cooked him when it came to both the run game and the receiving game. And so they were kind of able to just do whatever they wanted. Baker Mayfield, did he throw 3 interceptions? Yeah. But at the same time, I think that Tampa Bay realized that they can be incredibly aggressive in this one, because New Orleans just couldn't get anything going for the most part outside of that second quarter. And Spencer Rattler was also going to potentially turn the ball over. And he did. He threw 2 interceptions. Chris Olave also had that one fumble that I think was the one where he got injured and ruled out for the game.
Yeah, very unfortunate.
Which was unfortunate. And then the Tampa defense completely took out the playmakers from New Orleans, both literally by taking out Chris Olave on that play. I'm not saying they were trying to do it intentionally, but he did get a concussion, fumbled, and he's out for the game. Or like out of the game script, which is Alvin Kamara, because Tampa Bay was able to take the lead, turn this into a shootout early, and so now New Orleans is playing from behind. In the second quarter, they got to start throwing the ball a ton, so they can't just sit there and try to run with Alvin Kamara throughout the day. But then even then on the receiving work, Alvin Kamara only had 24 total receiving yards. I mean, the top 4 leading receivers for the Saints were Foster Moreau, Jawan Johnson, Bub Means, and Cedric Wilson. And so it's like Rashid Shaheed, 7 targets, only 1 catch. Chris Olave, once again, he was ruled out. So like they all the Olave, Rashid Shaheed, and Alvin Kamara, those are the guys that are going to beat you for the Saints typically, and they weren't able to do anything in this one. And so yeah, Tampa played a fantastic game. Honestly, the only critique that I would have was the turnovers that they had when it came to Baker throwing the 3 picks. I believe one of them was tipped and wasn't really his fault, but the other 2, if I recall correctly, were kind of his fault. So that's not great. But other than that, I mean, Tampa Bay kind of just had their way with New Orleans.
Yeah, I mean, just to add on the run game, I mean, literally, some of that was in garbage time, Sean Tucker, but the fact, that he was just able to run all over them, and not like, and there are times too where he ran through people too. It's not like, he just had easy gaping holes for him to run through. There were a couple of tough runs where he just shed some tackles. And honestly, that was kind of the story of the game too. Like, I wonder maybe if that loss on Monday and losing Derek Carr and a little bit kind of a short week, just kind of, I'm not trying to make excuses for them, just kind of has been demoralizing for the Saints, especially after their hot start. And then, yeah, you talk about losing Olave early too. So it's like, dang, like, and then, not to harp too much on Spencer Rattler, his first start, and he's a late round pick. So this isn't a shocker, but one of the things you got to work on a little bit is, and a lot of young quarterbacks can work on at times when they come to the NFL, is like stepping up into the pocket, because it's not something that they have to kind of, I guess, understand coming in the NFL. It's not college where you're able to, when the pocket collapses, like most of the time, and you saw a couple of times where he thought he'd get the edge, all these edge rushers. Like, okay, I can try to run them, which in college you can for a majority of those guys. Not really going to work in the NFL. He took a couple sacks where I was like, man, if you just step up in the pocket, like you may have more time, or you may be able to step up and then have a real scramble. But that's more ticky tack, because it's not like it would have helped that much in the grand scheme of things. Because like outside of that second quarter, once again buoyed by, I believe they had all three of his picks in that second quarter. One, two, maybe one is that. Yeah, all three of his Baker's interceptions were in that second quarter. So, like outside of that, they couldn't do much, like you alluded to. So, it'd be interesting to see how the Saints move going forward. I wonder if Taysom Hill gets back too, which I feel like will help, another weapon for them. Do they still use him as a weapon, or maybe try him at quarterback? I don't know. I don't know if that's a solution either. But nonetheless, great domination by the Bucs, and especially like you mentioned, the balance on offense and defense outside the second quarter, which once again not really their fault. Defense really stepped up to the plate too, as always with the Todd Bowles type defense. So kudos to Tampa Bay for cashing in for me, because I really needed that this week. Although it was looking scary there in the second quarter, or going into halftime when they were down 27-24. But luckily, they closed the deal in the second half. But anything else you want to throw in before we move on over?
Nope.
All right. Let's move on over. This next one probably should be short and sweet, kind of like that one. As my Green Bay Packers, they beat the Arizona Cardinals 34-13 at home. Your thoughts here, John?
The Packers, they look good in this one. I thought the Cardinals were going to be a lot more competitive, but unfortunately, they did have Marvin Harrison Jr. get ruled out pretty early, so he wasn't a factor, and it kind of just looked like the Cardinals offense from last year, where, when the run game wasn't really consistent, whether that be James Conner wasn't, great, or, the Packers defense was shutting him down. They got some stuff out of Trey Benson and Amari DiMercato, but it wasn't like really enough, and they were playing from behind because their defense couldn't slow down Green Bay. They just didn't look. Arizona looked bad. Like I said, I think the Marvin Harrison Jr. factor, the fact that he wasn't out there on the outside, was a problem, because then we just went back to a lot of Trey McBride, a lot of dump offs to DiMercato, some stuff to Greg Dortch over the middle. Basically, no presence on the outside to like test Green Bay's defense on the boundary and force them to defend the whole field. And so that allows them to, when they don't have to defend the whole field, that allows them to, sort of cheat up in the box, because they can just stop your run and cover stuff over the middle. So Green Bay, they came out strong. Jordan Love had a great game. Josh Jacobs wasn't super efficient, but, he grinded out kind of a performance and didn't really have to be super efficient when, you've got so many different players, running the ball. You've got so many different receiving options, getting involved with some explosive plays. So, it's and also I forgot the one big thing, that it felt like every time Arizona had like a chance to, like, all right, if you score here, you get a defensive stop, maybe you can get back into this game, fumbled. Like, I kept tuning into this one through Red Zone, and it was like, oh, James Conner fumbled. Oh, Greg Dortch fumbled. Oh, there's the botch snap and the handoff to Trey Benson, and it's a fumble. And so, absolutely brutal performance from the Cardinals. I believe was all three fumbles in a row at the end of the game.
Their last three possessions ended in fumbles.
Yeah, so literally, like, okay, we come out of the halftime, Arizona gets a field goal, 24-13. Okay, then Green Bay gets a touchdown, 31-13. This is probably out of reach. Fumble. But then Green Bay misses a field goal, fumble. Then they make a field goal, fumble. So it's like, over those 3 drives, imagine, you score 2 touchdowns, you score maybe a field goal, and that you're right back in the game. You're in the game, but instead 3 fumbles in a row in that second half. Absolutely brutal performance in that regard. And sometimes you have those games. For Arizona, I'm not going to sit there and panic and freak out about that one because Green Bay's a great team. You were playing at Lambeau. Marvin Harrison Jr. got ruled out, and you got to clean up the fumbling, and who knows, maybe they can fix it. So yeah, but for Green Bay, really good game.
Yeah, I do want to say, like, offensively, especially passing wise, you kind of already hit on it, but like I would say Jordan Love's best game thus far, at least in regards to how he looked and how he threw the ball, decision making, decisiveness. So that's good. And that's Jane Reed didn't really get involved that much as well, and he's probably one of our better. But I think it goes to show our depth in our receiver room. So kudos to Green Bay there. And you mentioned the run game was good enough and such. So yeah, I mean, that was a concern though coming into this, was Arizona's defense as good as Gannon can be at scheming things up. We mentioned, like, there's not many guys in the front seven that scare you, and that showed because Love also had like all day to throw. On top of that, like, there are times where he was just sitting there patting the ball like 2-3 pats, and then hit the crosser after like 3 seconds. So that's no shock. The more shocking thing a little bit was on the other side was, and for me it has continued to be our defense. Granted, like you mentioned, the one of the fumbles was a bad snap, but the other two, like James Conner and Dortch, like, just a little bit of pleasant surprise because in most of my lifetime, Green Bay has never really been a more like an extremely physical, especially turnover, heavy team, especially defensively. So it's just really odd now that we, at least at Verizon right now, we are, and also getting stops, because sometimes usually it would be either or. Like, I remember it was a couple of years ago. I think we had way back in the McCarthy days. I think we had Charles Woodson's last few years. We did lead the league in like turnovers, but we were not great in terms of getting actual stops yardage wise. So granted, it's the Cardinals. I'm not going to sit here and throw a parade, but just encouraging things to see, because I was a little bit worried about the Kyler Murray factor. Granted, we played him before, but still, he's always a difficult person to bottle up. But we'll see. Obviously, how the Cardinals kind of handle going forward. It's not a shocker, like we've mentioned before the season. Like, this is a team that's still kind of in a rebuild, and this is the first real year for Gannon, with Kyler, because he was out most of last year, to kind of put it all together. So we'll see if they can kind of turn around. Like I said, they had moments and they have talent. Just gotta put it all together and give it some time. But good one for my Packers to go to 4-2. And this crazy loaded NFC North that we will touch more on as we go on here. But Cardinals fall to 2-4 on the year. Anything else, or can I move on to Colts Titans?
That's it.
All right, let's move to Colts Titans. This one was definitely closer, not nearly as exciting, especially highlight wise. So definitely a grinded out type game that we've gotten most of the year. But the Colts, they get the win on the road, 20-17 against Tennessee. What were your thoughts here in regards to Joe Flacco stepping in for another win here?
I don't have much to say about the Colts. Quite frankly, I didn't really feel like they necessarily did anything crazy. But they won the turnover battle, which is big when it comes to these close games. Joe Flacco had a decent day. Josh Downs had a great game. Michael Pittman, fighting through injuries, had a good touchdown. Through the run game, Trey Sermon literally did nothing for the most part, but they got an explosive run from Tyler Goodson. Offensively, there just wasn't much there, but defensively, they played good. At the same time, that doesn't feel too hard to do against the Tennessee Titans, because the passing game has gotten bad. It's gotten really, really bad. And I don't want to sit here and put all the blame on Will Levis. He has not been great. I feel like the play calling has not been great. I feel like the protection has not been great. But I don't know. It's bad, because he threw for 95 yards, a touchdown, interception. DeAndre Hopkins was their leading receiver for 54 yards. After that, nobody had over 20. So it's terrible. I mean, Calvin Ridley got targeted 8 times and didn't catch a single one. And if you go back and watch the throws, it's terrible. It's brutal. So I don't know. I don't know how you fix this Titans team. The run game was good. Tyjae Spears was solid. Tony Pollard was solid. But the passing attack is just so bad that they And it feels like every week Will Levis is going to make a mistake, whether it's a fumble, an interception, missed throw, what have you. It's going to happen. So I don't know. I don't know where the
Yeah.
Titans' passing attack goes from here.
Yeah, like even this game, as you already said, like Will's trying to be conservative. You could tell he was trying to just limit the play. It was in his head, obviously. Probably all of the memeing slash, all the turnovers that he's been criticized for, obviously. So I don't know if maybe they try to recorrect that and just say, hey man, just let it go and live with the result. I don't know. Yeah, it's tough because yeah, like you said, like there are pieces there for there to be some success, but it's just not formulating right now. And granted, still year one under Callahan. So yeah, maybe this is just, further confirmation that, Will is may not be the guy there in Tennessee or may need more time. I don't know what decision they'll make. Obviously, still a lot more time left in the season, but it's not great. Even like I tried to think of it. Even I went back looked last year because I was like, man, like is feels a little bit kind of like Jordan Love last year. But once again, Love had sat a few seasons, and even then, Love looked better at certain points during that first half of last year than Will Levis. And once again, Love had a couple more years on him, but yeah, it's not looked good here. And also like kind of a big opportunity miss too to get some momentum because like we mentioned going into this game, like Tennessee was coming off a bye, and this is also like the Colts defense that we've mentioned is not very good, especially in the secondary. We've always been critical of their defensive backs, and this felt like a prime opportunity to get your offense and your young quarterback jump started. They weren't able to do so. So yeah, like it's a little bit like the Titans, where it's like it's even worse because like there's no obvious like hey just fire the head coach and maybe things will turn out because this is his first year. So yeah, maybe it is the quarterback here. Obviously, he's not signed to some crazy extension like Trevor Lawrence is, and not more about picks. It's not all that as much pressure slash to keep him and make it work. But yeah, I don't know the obvious fix here, and yeah, maybe they need to incorporate a better play action game. Who knows? But yeah, this was one they probably should have won. Had opportunities to. I mean, they're up 7 going into the fourth, and just couldn't get anything going. So yeah, tough loss. Titans fall to 0-3 at home too, so I'm sure that doesn't help when you lose in front of your home fans with your young quarterback. So, and meanwhile, old Joe Flacco's over there on the other side, leading the Colts to victory. So, yeah, good win for the Colts. They stay alive, afloat after a rough start, and they should get Anthony Richardson back next week. And for Tennessee, I don't know. Like we both said, who knows? What's in store for them as things will not get easier going forward either for them. But yeah, Colts get the win. Tennessee falls to 1-4 off the bye week. So let's move on over to another team that came off the bye, but they actually won and took advantage of that. And it was the Philadelphia Eagles. They beat the Cleveland Browns 20-16. So a little bit closer and uglier contest than at least I was definitely anticipating. Although because I picked Philly, you picked Cleveland here. What were your thoughts though? And once again, John you probably picked them to cover, not to actually win. But What were your thoughts in regards to the Eagles kind of eking out a victory here?
Yeah, I mean, it's what I figured. I still think that Cleveland has a good defense. I still think that Philly has some issues. Now, offensively, they were able to get the passing attack going, which is the thing that I actually was thinking maybe wouldn't happen. I thought maybe Jalen Hurts would turn the ball over a little bit here. But no, it was actually the run game that couldn't do anything. Saquon Barkley largely inefficient. Jalen Hurts even running the ball largely inefficient. And they didn't turn the ball over, so that wasn't necessarily the issue. But I did think it was going to be a scrappy game, and I think that's what it was. Cleveland offensively couldn't do much either. Deshaun Watson, passing attack is absolutely brutal. They just traded away Amari Cooper. I think now I read that now that Amari Cooper's gone, they only have one player on the roster that has scored multiple touchdowns, and that's backup safety Rodney McLeod.
Yep.
And he's on defense. So that's just how brutal this offense has been. And Amari Cooper's the only player who has scored multiple touchdowns on the season. Now Njoku's been out. Nick Chubb's been out. So, like, there's, some of that stuff going on. But the offense is terrible. It continued to be terrible in this one. But really the thing that jump-started them was the fact that they got that blocked field goal touchdown that tied the ball game right before halftime. And so that was huge because that made it close in a situation where Philly goes up 10-0. Then Cleveland responds to the field goal, and then immediately on the next play, block field goal, touchdown, boom, tie ball game going to the half. And Cleveland had opportunities here. They missed a field goal right after halftime, and if they hit that, I don't know. Maybe then in the final drive or two, instead of getting those extra field goals they did get, maybe they'd get a little more aggressive there. Who knows? And they could have maybe come out with this one, but yeah, ultimately, it was just an ugly game, and I think that's to me. I think that's just what Philadelphia is going to be on the year. I think that at some point they'll probably get the offense fully going, but as of right now, I still think they're kind of in this weird spot where like because of injuries, because of whatever, like they're just trying to get everybody back on the same page. So yeah.
Yeah, only thing I want to add really is for Philly's offense, watch it. Maybe a reason why they struggled or stagnated. Losing Dallas Goedert, he does a lot of their short to in the middle, intermediate stuff, and obviously a key blocker in the run game as well at times. So that's a little caveat for Eagles fans, but yeah, I mean, not much else to note. I mean, I know Watson was a little bit more efficient, and it's sad that we're having to get to this point in regards to like he threw from 168, like that's not great, and then he had some untimely sacks too. You mentioned on those last two field goal drives that the Browns had. I mean, both of them. One there, like I think the last drive, they're like it was a goal to go. So it was like at the Philly 3, and then granted also penalties too. We mentioned so that Hayes out on Deshaun, is that on the head coach Stefanski too. We just mentioned how for Peterson, things like that kind of reflect on the head coach, like that's the sloppiness. So and that's been an issue for the Browns. Anyway, this year. So yeah, just like you mentioned, just overall sloppy team all around, except for maybe on defense. Even then, the defense has had some slip ups this year and is not on par to what they were last year. And yeah, I mean, just if it wasn't for that, really, like you said, it wasn't for that blocked field goal touchdown, probably an entirely different game. Because yeah, very likely that the Philly goes in a half up 13-3, and yeah, like probably is in control, more control than what they were for the second half, because really, I don't think Cleveland even led at all this game. I mean, they tied, but yeah, they never really led. So, yeah, tough win for the Eagles, but that's sometimes that it's a win that they maybe didn't get last year. At times, or especially at the end of the season. But they prevail, they get the win. Cleveland, the only underdog to cover the spread as well. So I guess there's that, even though no one's going to care about that in the building. And like John mentioned, it seems like they are shifting gears now as they've trade away Amari Cooper. We'll talk about that later. And we'll see what happens if any other assets are on the trade block going forward. But let's move on over to the Houston Texans, as this will be also kind of short and sweet. They beat the Patriots, no shocker there, 41-21. Just another great day on offense for them, as well as getting Joe Mixon back, as he was really efficient. Even Dameon Pierce sighting, although some of that was in garbage time. Nonetheless, though, John, what are your thoughts here in regards to this game and obviously Drake May's debut?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have too much to say about Houston. They looked fantastic. They, like you said, even in with Dameon Pierce in garbage time, he looked really good. They could run the ball. Big explosive plays from both him and Mixon. The receiving game, Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs both looked great. Joe Mixon did good in the receiving game as well. So, I mean, C.J. Stroud didn't really have to do too much. It was just, hey, let's run the ball. I'll throw some touchdowns. Here we go. Easy stuff. For the Patriots, Drake May did turn the ball over 3 times. He did have 2 interceptions. He did have 1 fumble. One of those interceptions was definitely not his fault. It was, I believe, tipped and by somebody, and it was, I can't remember the exact circumstance of it, but I remember watching it and going, yeah, that wasn't on him. I can't remember the other one, and I can't remember the fumble because I was watching through Red Zone. But I'm assuming those 2 were probably his fault. But overall, I thought Drake May had a great performance. They were playing from behind throughout most of the day, so they couldn't really just try to rely on the run game. They had to be one-dimensional, which I do think allows for the Houston defense to really, tee off on him and try to pressure him a lot and make his life living hell. And yet 20-33, 243 yards, 3 touchdowns. I thought he played a good game. He was also their leading rusher, which is something you never want to see. But Antonio Gibson, 13 carries for 19 yards. No Ramondre Stevenson in this one. And so given the circumstances of the game, yes, they lost. Yes, he had 3 turnovers. I think he had a good game. I think if you're a Patriots fan, you're encouraged by this one. and you just got to hope that you can get the run game going. Your defense can play a little better in the future. So, yeah.
I mean, yeah, they were actually, it was 14-7 going, coming out of half. It's just,
Right.
yeah, the wheels kind of fell off. Like you mentioned, offense stagnated. But I will concur, like Drake obviously made like that throw to Kayshawn. I always mispronounce the last name. I don't know if it's Booty or Butte. I don't know. But anyway, threw a nice dime, 1-on-1. Kayshawn beat Derek Stingley of all people too. And, that was a great pass. And then got Demario Douglas involved. He's always been a very solid, at least slot receiver guy for the Patriots. And so, yeah, like this is what you want to, at the very least. Obviously, you want to win, but encouraging performance. Made some, you can say, highlight plays / maximizing some of those, whether it's scripted or off script in regards to, the play design. Even the fumble, like you mentioned, that was a strip sack, so not really on Drake's. Yeah, it's not really on Drake. Because obviously, like you mentioned, they're and like we've seen before, their old line's not great as of right now anyway. And then, yeah, now that at that point, probably Houston knew that they can't run on us. So like you said, they were just peeling the ears back, teeing off on Drake in the pass rush aspect. But so yeah, not much else to add. Hopefully, Drake can clean it up. I mean, it was still a pretty good. We've had worse starting debuts for many rookies, so it was encouraging, especially against a pretty good Houston Texans team in general. Obviously, they didn't get the win, but yeah, not many outside of New England really expecting the Patriots to kind of pull off an upset there. But yeah, for the Texans, only one thing I'm going to add does help when we see that they have balance. Their offense is extremely efficient, like you mentioned with Mixon. Huge piece there, and hopefully they can get. I'm assuming that they are maybe more confident in Dameon Pierce after this game because they did trade away Cam Akers back to the Vikings, I guess. Because I'm assuming that's because they feel good about Dameon, and then we know Dare Ogunbowale is solid and also has utility because he can be an emergency kicker. So I'm sure he has more value in that sense. But yeah, good win for the Texans, and also shout out. I know it was against the Patriots, but shout out Will Anderson. 3 sacks here. Nothing to scoff at this point, even though it was against the Patriots. But yeah, good win for the Texans. They take care of business, going to 5-1. While the Patriots are on the flip side, 1-5. But no one's really shocked once again. Sorry, Patriot fans, but that's just the truth of it. Anyway, let's move on over, keeping it in the AFC, to an AFC West divisional showdown, as it was the LA Chargers. They coming off their bye. They win over the Denver Broncos 23-16 here. And that's despite, not really having Coach Jim Harbaugh for a portion there. He's dealing with a heart arrhythmia, which he's had an issue with the past. So hopefully he continues to be okay. But nonetheless, here, John, Chargers find a way. What were your thoughts here in regards to their gritty win over the Denver Broncos on the road?
The Chargers look good. J.K. Dobbins, it was a grinded out game, which was good to see from him because we know that he could do the explosive plays. It was, can he have one of these games where, not a lot going for him on the ground, but is still able to make it work, which felt like that was going to be Gus Edwards' role. But obviously with Gus going on IR, somebody else has got to be that guy. And J.K. Dobbins showed that he can be that guy. So that was good to see. Justin Herbert had a solid day through the air, 237 yards. He did throw a touchdown to Kamani Vidal. Unfortunately, Quentin Johnston got ruled out pretty early in this one, so we didn't get to see the full Chargers passing attack, but it looked solid, and they took advantage of the fact that Patrick Surtain did get ruled out due to concussion as well. But ultimately, I think they won the game because they played complimentary football. Jamonte Williams did lose a fumble. Bo Nix did throw an interception, and the Chargers were able to capitalize on those things and come out with a close win. So I felt like both teams looked pretty evenly matched overall. Unfortunately for the Broncos, they kind of went back to their old selves, which was not relying on the run game, not giving it much of a chance, despite the fact it was a close game. And the run game, I wouldn't say was terribly inefficient. Like Javonte had 6 carries for 23 yards. That's like almost 4 yards a carry. Audric Esteem, the rookie, he got involved 2 for 13. So I felt like they should have ran the ball a little bit more than they did. And that somewhat disappoints me because I thought that the Broncos seemed to have found the rhythm of how they want to play offense, but we went just kind of back to reverting to Bo Nix having to carry the team. So, I mean, he threw it 33 times, but there were more pass plays drawn up than that because he also ran it 6 times, and I don't think any of those were designed. So basically they called like 40 pass plays for him.
Yeah, I mean that's what I was going to mention. I concur, and I'm not sure that's Sean Payton thing or what, but it's something that, especially like you mentioned with the Chargers, complimentary football, they were patient with it, and yeah, the big thing really is typical Jim Harbaugh style though. We're not going to make mistakes. We're going to let them beat themselves, and like you said, that's basically what happened here. Broncos just a little sloppy too. A couple drops, and you mentioned the turnovers as well. And it seems like every time, like you said, that this running back or the offense takes a step forward, you think they're going to take another step in the right direction. It just feels like it take a step back. So we'll see. Obviously, Bo Nick's still young. A couple young pieces there still too as well in regards to their skill position guys. So maybe not real reason to panic. I mean, still 3-3, but definitely expected better, especially for some of these games. And this may be tough at the end of the season if they miss out. Look back early in the season, like, man, there's some of these games that we were the better team, or we had opportunities, we just weren't good enough. So we'll see if they can get the offense back on track going forward. But nonetheless, for the Chargers, good win to come off their bye as they go to 3-2, except for the Broncos at 3-3. So the sky's not falling yet. They're still pretty solidly within the playoff picture. But that was that. Let's move on over to the next one. This one, game-wise, not much to talk about as the Steelers take care of business against the Raiders in Las Vegas, 32-13. Najee Harris. I mean, it was just a day for the Steelers in the run game as Najee Harris and Justin Fields, when carrying the ball, they were effective. But what were your thoughts here, if any, in regards to the Steelers kind of just dominating the Raiders?
Steelers looked good. I'm going to be real. All of a sudden, and this is not even related to this game, all of a sudden there's reports coming out that they're going to move to Russell Wilson, and I don't understand it because you're sitting at 4-2. And when I look at this offense, your offensive line isn't great. You really have no true receiving options that most people really respect. Like George Pickens seems to be kind of the only one, and even he hasn't really done much on this year, whether that be up to him or Fields or just whatever. And he unfortunately, and part of it is also he has had many huge plays get called back due to penalties. It seems like it's a talent at this point somehow that he makes crazy plays, and then there happens to be a holding flag or something down, way downfield from where he is. So, so the offense just doesn't seem like it's that great of stuff, and yet they're like, yeah, let's run Russell Wilson out there. Despite the fact that Justin Fields also adds the dynamic of being one of the most deadly rushing quarterbacks in the league. Like, I think he's been fantastic for them when it comes to that aspect, and he's not turning the ball over. So I think it's a little ridiculous that they're all of a sudden talking about potentially making this change. And I think that Fields should remain the starting quarterback considering the season that he has had so far. Once again, he's not Patrick Mahomes, but in the way that they're playing football, they're not asking him to be. And I think that Russell Wilson, maybe he'll change the passing attack, and all of a sudden George Pickens and Freiermuth and Calvin Austin, these guys are going to start lighting the world on fire, but I just don't expect that to be the case. And I think you downgrade heavily when it comes to the rushing production without Fields. So just wanted to get that off my chest. Otherwise, Najee Harris looked good. I think this is his best football game that I've seen Najee Harris play in, quite frankly, years. He looked really... He looked really solid. He looked explosive. He got that touchdown. He had that big 36-yard run. So he looked fantastic for them. He looked really good. Defensively, the Steelers did what they normally do. They completely stifled the Raiders' run attack. They took pretty much everybody out of the game except for Brock Bowers, and that just goes to show how good Brock Bowers is. So he's a stud, but other than that, Las Vegas doesn't have much going for him. It was unfortunately, obviously Devontae Adams was going to get traded, as we eventually saw, so he wasn't playing. Jacoby Myers was ruled out with injury. Zamir White ruled out with injury. So they did have some people that weren't playing, but ultimately Pittsburgh was going to win this game regardless, and they won it in really dominant fashion. Real quick before you go, I did want to add, because this is news unrelated to the game but is related to the Raiders, and that is the fact that you see that Tom Brady's officially been approved as a minority stake owner in the Raiders.
Yeah, I mean, good. Yeah, I did see that.
Well, so here's why I wanted to bring it up, because he now has restrictions placed on him due to the fact that he is an owner, right?
Mm-hmm.
And some of those restrictions are he is not permitted to be in another team's facility. I'm assuming that doesn't mean like a stadium on game day, because otherwise he literally can't be a commentator. I'm assuming that just means like the practice arena, the offices, whatever, which is fine, because I'm assuming he wouldn't have been there anyway. He's not permitted to attend broadcast production meetings either in person or virtually. that seems crazy. Like if I'm Fox, I'm a little pissed at that. Like he can't attend broadcast meetings. He can't do his job. That seems part of the job. Um, he's prohibited from publicly criticizing game officials and other teams. What? How is Tom Brady supposed to be a commentator at this point? He's just gonna
Um,
kumbaya, gas everybody up. He can't
I
criticize
guess
them.
so.
Like this, like this. Listen, unfortunately for Tom, this man works for Fox, which means that he's casting the Dallas Cowboys basically every week because the Dallas Cowboys are always America's game of the week. Sadly, I've had to hear Tom Brady and Kevin Burkhardt and previously Greg Olson basically every week of my life for the past few years. So that's unfortunate for Tom Brady because there's a lot of criticizing that needs to happen when you're commentating the Dallas Cowboys. So it seems absolutely insane to me that he can't criticize the other teams. Like there has to be some sort of clarity for Tom Brady specifically on that because there's no way he can't, like if Dak Prescott makes a bad throw, there's no way he can't be like, yeah, that's just a bad decision. That's a terrible throw by Dak. Like if it extends that far where he can't critique anything about them, I don't know how he can be an effective commentator at this point. So I just wanted to bring that up because that seems crazy.
Yeah, I would, and I don't know the legal. I would assume, and I'm with you. I would assume Tom, he's obviously got a good amount of power and money. I would assume that him and his legal team are probably have some sort of stipulations, or he's aware, or you know what I mean. I'm assuming that all parties, especially with Tom and Fox, are
Sure.
aware of what's of what he can and can't do. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see though, because playoff time too, just especially they may have to do they usually want to do a little bit more with the media coverage or whatnot, and you don't really know where you're gonna go and stuff. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see, and especially I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, next week they're not in Dallas for sure, but I wouldn't be shocked if maybe do they flex the America's Game of the Week, right? It's just they kind of do it. I guess off a feel, right? Especially as the season goes on. Do you know? If you don't, that's fine.
I'm gonna be real
curious
because I look at the slate of some of the games. Like, sure, Dallas will try to get that one, but some of these Dallas games, like, it doesn't feel like that should be America's Game of the Week. Who did they play the previous week? It was the Steelers was primetime game. Giants was Thursday night. What was it? Cowboys Ravens made sense. Cowboys Saints I didn't feel like made sense at the time.
Yeah.
Now obviously the Saints got a lot of hype after that, but they were the game of the week. Meanwhile, like there just seemed to be other games that were better. My full expectation is it's based on viewership, and the Cowboys pull the most viewers, so the Cowboys are the game of the week.
That's when in doubt.
Because there's
Well,
when I look back at this season, Detroit and Baltimore, like those games make sense. The Saints one is just a one-off one. But like when I even think about previous years, there's literally games where it was like Dallas versus the Giants. And over the last like 6, 7, 8, like ever since Dak Prescott's come into the league, that man has owned the Giants. The Cowboys always beat them. And so it's like, why is that the game of the week? Well, because I'm assuming viewership. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, at least for next week, it's justified because there's only one game on Fox in the PMs or in the late afternoon slot, and it's Chiefs and Niners. So, and your Cowboys are on bye, so
Yeah.
so maybe that's why they're like, oh well, no Cowboys. So I guess we got to go somewhere else. So
Yeah.
it'd be interesting to see how he has to, if he has to manage those hoops, and if he doesn't, what's going to happen? Because, yeah, I mean it's very odd. I'm assuming too. It's because why he picked, and I don't know. I'm just assuming he picked the Raiders also because of Las Vegas. Because like, man, that's probably a pretty good opportunity, obviously. So, that city probably rakes in the money. So we'll see how that all affects that going forward. Luckily, the Raiders, I think, usually are on CBS. So I guess that won't overlap too much. But once again, we'll see if anything happens here or maybe in the future. May take a couple of years. Maybe the Raiders or the Fox has a Super Bowl and the Raiders in the Super Bowl and he can't. Greg Olson will have to step in. I don't know, but it'll be interesting to see how that's handled going forward. But I didn't have, in regards to the game, I don't have much else to add. In regards to what you already said, I wanted to point, I'm pro Justin Fields at this point because, like he said, like he's a better runner and just scrambler than Russell Wilson right now. So yeah, it adds that extra aspect, like you mentioned. I mean, because a couple of those touchdowns runs, like I don't think Russell Wilson's getting the edge, While as opposed to Justin Fields, I was like, okay, like Justin Fields obviously got the edge, but I don't think Russell Wilson is gonna beat this guy to the touch to the to the end zone with his legs. So we'll see. I'm assuming if I was Pittsburgh, I would kind of have a short-ish leash because I know he has been great in the passing game, but it's been solid. He has been horrible. I would kind of have like short leash for like, hey, maybe if it's a tough game or two that he's had, then maybe kind of throw in Russell as like the backup. And it seems like from what I've read and heard, like Pittsburgh wants Justin Fields to be the long-term guy. So but the only thing knock on Justin Fields has been he's a little raw, which the only way to fix that is to let him keep playing, at least in my opinion. It's just you got to keep throwing him out there and take his licks. And for the most part, like you said, they've been winning. And like you said, you said perfectly, complimentary football in regards to that they still want to be a run first team, play good defense, and that kind of came to light here in this game at least. So we'll see if that formula can continue for them. And for the Raiders, seems like they're already looking onto the offseason / developing young talent, as lost trade away Devontae, which we'll talk about when that game comes up. But also Christian Wilkins last week went on IR as well. I don't think they're going to trade Max Crosby. I know there's already the Detroit Lion fans trying to they already got the photoshops out for him. I don't know about how you feel about that, but I really don't think they're going to trade Crosby unless they get some sort of crazy offer. But I doubt that's going to happen.
Max Crosby's a superstar, and that man went on record last week in a post-game interview saying, the people who think I want to be traded, I literally have this tattooed on my body as he's shirtless showing off his, Raiders tattoos. So I don't think Max Crosby has any intention to leave. And I'm not even entertaining that idea, quite frankly.
Yeah, because he's still in his prime too. He's still, or you could say maybe he's entering his prime, but he's still like Devontae was a little bit different while he was, towards the end, and also the contract. So it's like, man, like
Devontae has no loyalty to that team. Clearly, because he wasn't drafted by them. He hasn't been playing there for a long time. It's different with Max, right? I think it's different.
Yeah. And all the reports throughout even the past, like it feels like 2 years it's been with Devontae. And maybe some of it may be smoke or stuff, but there's smoke, there's fire, and I concur. I don't think Max Crosby's going to be moved.
And for the Devontae thing too, he wanted to get traded to the Raiders to play with Derek Carr, and then they got rid of Derek Carr after a year. So it's like the whole reason he wanted to go there was for a very specific quarterback. Now, obviously, he also expected the team to be better, but then the reason that I fully believe those reports to this day is because then the reports this year were that his top two teams were the Jets and the Saints, because he wants to play with Aaron Rodgers or Derek Carr. So I think Devontae, he likes familiarity with quarterbacks. He likes the guys he likes because he knows how they're going to play and how they're going to throw. And anyway.
We'll talk about that in a second. But let's move on. Let's keep on moving. We're going to move on. This one will be probably more cut and dry, as the Atlanta Falcons, they beat the Carolina Panthers. No shocker, 38-20. Carolina, after kind of an exciting couple of weeks, seems to have come back to earth. Any thoughts here, though, in regards to the Falcons taking care of business?
I think the one encouraging thing from this one was this felt like the first time in basically Atlanta Falcons history that they got all three of their guys going. We got Bijan Robinson, 15 carries, 95 yards, 2 touchdowns. They also got Algier going. He dominated too, although he was a lot more in the second half, which I think was fine. Rest Bijan, no need to absolutely work him to the ground in a game in which you're dominating, right? So they got both running backs great. They were fantastic. Drake London, 6 catches, 74 yards, a touchdown. Even Kyle Pitts, 3 catches, 70 yards. Didn't get a touchdown, but he had an explosive 52-yard play. So the fact that both your top 2 receiving options got over 70 yards, the fact that your star running back got 95 yards, 2 tutties, and then even your backup running back got over 100 on the ground. And that's just a great offensive day from the Atlanta Falcons. They looked really good. You'll love to see it. It is the Carolina Panthers, so we're not going to sit here and praise it too much because it is what it is. For the Panthers, Andy Dalton I thought looked fine. He threw the 2 picks. But, you're trailing from the get-go. The Atlanta Falcons are controlling the pace of play with the run game. So you're trying to make plays happen. It is what it is. Chuba Hubbard has continued to look really good. He's been very efficient on the season, even in losses. Like, he's running for over 5 yards a carry. So kudos to him in the offensive line, because the run game is good. It makes me wonder if their defense is a lot better, what Carolina could be doing, honestly, on the season. For the receiving game, Deontay Johnson, a good day. Jatavion Sanders is kind of the first game that it really felt like we noticed him, the rookie tight end. And then also this young rookie, Jalen Coker, has started to pop up the last couple weeks. It seems like he's starting to steal snaps from Jonathan Mingo, who has pretty much just not really done much ever since they drafted him, unfortunately. So Coker's an eye to look out for, because when Leggett got injured last week, Coker stepped up and was their leading receiver. This week he's their third leading receiver, even had more yards than Leggett did. So I don't know. Carolina, there's some interesting stuff there, but they're still bad.
Yeah, I don't have much else to add. You kind of summed it up there greatly. I still think just the only one thing I want to add to go forward. Still think you got to start Andy Dalton, but as the losses accumulate, I think obviously the question will arise more and more. Okay, do you throw out Bryce to try to, see what he's got, see what you got in him, and see if maybe you can salvage something or whatnot. But we'll see. Obviously, they're still kind of trying to compete. I know they're have minimal chances at 1-5. But obviously, you want to, we talk about culture all the time. You want to try to inspire winning culture. And so obviously, I think as we've seen, and people like you have, reinforced or we're pushing for, like Andy Dalton, it's been better on Andy Dalton. You can't deny that. The offensive, at least the product on the field has been better on the offense as a whole. So, you got to keep throwing out the red rifle, at least until further notice. But good dominant win for the Falcons on the road against a division foe. So that's critical for them to get that win. All right, let's move on to your game, unfortunately, as the Detroit Lions win 47-9 over the Dallas Cowboys. Pretty much dominance. Only bad thing, of course, for Lions fans is obviously you lose Aiden Hutchinson, unfortunately, probably for the whole season, I would assume, considering he broke his fibula, broke his leg or something of the sort, and that nasty play. So that's unfortunate. But nonetheless, they get the dominant win here on the road. What were your thoughts, John, as our resident Cowboy fan?
It was embarrassing. I'm not surprised at what Detroit was able to do offensively, because I thought that they would score a lot, but I figured that the Cowboys would turn this game into a shootout, and they did not. And so, the defense was banged up. It is what it is. I expected that. And yet, even then, I thought the defensive performance was okay. I know that sounds crazy to say when they allowed 47 points, but it's like, what do you want from that defense when you don't have a few of your best defenders and Dallas is just giving them the ball back over and over? Like, that's why I say I thought it was okay, because they had moments on third downs. They only allowed Detroit to convert 4 out of 10 of them. They had moments, but just simply put, like, it didn't really matter. Like, even then, like, they sacked Jared Goff 3 times, which I think is pretty good considering the state of that offensive line, how good they were running the ball. On the red zone, they were 3 of 5. The Lions were, so they stopped them in the red zone a couple times. So I thought the defense. Basically, what I'm saying is I thought the defense did enough in this game to make it competitive. Which, once again, I know sounds crazy, but the reason I say that is because if Dallas was able to play complementary football on the other side, if they weren't turning it over in bad situations, if they were able to establish a little bit of a run game and control the clock a little bit more, I think this was a winnable game, right? But they were so atrocious and embarrassing on offense that was never in the cards. And the defense is constantly having to run back out there, completely gassed, and has to just sit there and allow Detroit to continue to beat up on them because the offense wasn't playing complementary football at all. I don't understand the coaching game plan coming into this one. I do not understand why Ezekiel Elliott got more carries than Rico Dowdle did. Zeke had 8 carries for 17 yards, averaging 2 yards a carry. Rico had 5 carries. After a career-best game last week against the Steelers, you gave him 5 carries where he had 25 yards. He averaged 5 yards a carry. Why are we not running him more? Why did we start the game with like 3 straight drives of Zeke? Like, what is going on there? I get that maybe you put Zeke out there more because you want the pass protection, right? And Zeke is really good at pass protection. But I don't know. Like, I don't think the decoy effect of, oh, we're going to put Zeke out there to run, so then when we put him out there for pass pro, they're not sitting there just teeing off on us. They were teeing off on you anyway. I'm shocked. I am genuinely shocked at the lack of Rico Dowdle in this one. CeeDee Lamb looked okay, but like it still seems like him and Dak are not quite on the same page. Dak didn't make good decisions. They continue to turn the ball over in the red zone. The offense was just atrocious. They couldn't get Jake Ferguson involved. With Brandon Cooks injured, it seems like they don't have enough threats. They gave it to Jalen Brooks on the outside. Ryan Flournoy, the rookie, out on the outside one time, and he fumbled it immediately. Yeah. It's just an embarrassing offensive performance, and they're not going to fire Mike McCarthy. I've said it, for years now, that if they're going to fire him, it's going to be at the end of the season. But it's just so frustrating to watch because the last 4 home games, dating back to your Green Bay Packers, coming into Jerry's world in the playoffs, which I did my rant back then, so I'm not going to go on the rant on it again. But, honestly, the most embarrassing playoff loss in my lifetime, personally, as a Cowboys fan, considering the way that it happened and the circumstances of the 2nd seed and the 7th seed, dating back to that game at halftime of the last 4 home games, being this one, the Ravens game, the Saints game, and that game, they have been down at halftime a combined score of 110-35. Like, they're getting blown out, man, and it's just so... It sucks. It sucks to sit here and watch, and I'm just so frustrated. Like, why is Mike McCarthy still the head coach? We've seen the writing on the wall for years. Things are just getting worse. You talked about how Jerry Jones, you talked about how this was the all-in year. The run game's terrible. The one bright spot we have in the run game isn't being given the chance to actually continue to be that bright spot. It's the offensive line is brutal. The tackles both suck. And Tyler Guyton always has the excuse of being a rookie, but Terrence Steele is still bad. He had that one good year. He was a one-hit wonder, and he's been bad ever since. Zach Martin didn't have a good game. He allowed a sack. It's the Cowboys they're bad. They're bad. The offense is bad, and Dak's not making good decisions. The coaching staff is not getting the right people involved. They don't have any depth, it seems, outside of CD and Ferguson and like the occasional Tolbert play. And shout out to Tolbert because I think he's definitely progressed a lot more this year. But when he's like having to be your number 2, the Cowboys suck. Quite frankly, they suck.
Yeah. I don't know much else to add on what you're saying. I think it reminds me of the whole Rico Dowdle situation. It reminds me a bit of the end of Mike McCarthy when like people were upset that he was not freeing Aaron Jones. A little bit of that. Like there'd be games like where like it's like, and I'm not sure if it's an old school mentality maybe that McCarthy has where he's gonna lean on the veterans more at times, like you're saying, like you said. So I don't know, but yeah, I concur. I think Rico, like we said before going to this game, that Rico was the best running back in that running back room overall. But yeah, I mean, it's no shock that Detroit was able to at least run. You mentioned against the defense, it was kind of an uphill battle anyway. We all know that everyone knows football. Dallas not great at run defense going into this game, and we all know the Lions love that. So not a bit of a shock there. But yeah, the offense, like you said, though, it's just hard to be one dimensional in this league to begin with, and then on the fact that you like you said, your defense is working with less cards in the deck per se there, and yeah, just a lot of issues, and it's fortunate too. You're seeing, and granted, I know Dallas is a bit in the cap spot, but and not that they would probably take Tay's contract or bring back Amari Cooper, but yeah, obviously you'd like for them to be maybe if you are all in Jerry, maybe a little more aggressive or at least involved, because I don't think either one of them. Granted, there wasn't much Amari Cooper trade chatter, but I know there's all the rumors about all the different teams that Devontae was interested in or whatnot. So yeah, just fortunate.
I'll just say this on the cap thing. The Cowboys have over $20 million of cap space right now. So that's
they probably could have worked something out. Yeah. So
it's not an excuse.
I'm trying to think. Like I get a bad feeling. I'm gonna knock on wood for you for this. I got a bad feeling you're gonna end up with Mike Williams. Not that Mike Williams is bad, but you know what I mean. Where it's like a little bit like where like you got left at the altar, and now you're like, okay, now who do we get?
I
we got to
quite
bring
frankly
someone.
don't think they make a move at all.
I wouldn't be shocked if that. Honestly, I would. That I would put more. If I had money to put on it, if I could bet money, I'd put money on that. Just knowing what you've mentioned, and usually pretty spot on, or at least in regards to how conservative they can be. So, yeah, and it is troubling. How, and granted, I know Jake Ferguson has been banged up, but I'm not putting this all on him. Maybe it's the offense as well. He has just not had a great start to the season. As he usually has a good impact, especially down the seam or in the intermediate, like a couple of those type of plays. But it just doesn't seem like he's getting those this year. Granted, I know he's been injured, and I know your run game's not nearly as good, so that can impact that.
I was going to say the Steelers game, he was great. He had 6 catches for 70 yards. He didn't play against.
Sorry, but outside of that, but it's been tough.
He didn't play against the Giants.
He was injured.
But against the. So I would disagree with the statement, because against the Ravens, he was our leading receiver. He had 6 catches for 95 yards.
Okay.
And the Saints won. The offense was bad. I can't remember.
He didn't play that game either. He was out.
Correct.
His game
he didn't play
here.
that game. That was the Schoonmaker game. And then
he was 3 for 15 against Cleveland, but it was
that game. It didn't matter.
Y'all won anyway.
Yeah,
so,
that game they were good, so he didn't have to do anything.
So
but
maybe I'm being a little bit hyperbolic.
But in this game, I don't understand why they couldn't get him going. Like what is the problem? Like, because Detroit, the way they play defense, and what they did a lot this game is they love to play a lot of linebackers because they don't want you to run the ball. So why aren't we getting more Jake Ferguson against linebackers? Like, why isn't that working? I don't know. Anyway, it's just frustrating.
So we'll see if they can figure out, if Cowboys can figure out, turn around. Once again, 3-3, so not time to absolutely sell the farm, but
and they got a bye week, so
yeah, they have a bye week coming up this week, so maybe a good time to reconfigure there.
Yeah,
Lions go to 4-1.
They play the Niners off the bye though, so
yeah. So before we head to the Sunday night games, though, of course, I'm sure as everyone's seen, man, NFC North is, as of right now, cooking. As it's if the playoffs were to start right now, I believe all 4 teams would be in the playoffs. Obviously, as Bears 4-2, Packers 4-2, Lions 4-1, and obviously the Vikings, who are on bye this week. We won't talk about them, but they are 5-0. So
real quick, because on that statement, which you're not saying this, but I have seen some NFC North fans on the Twitterverse and some people I know are saying this. To the people who are arguing this is already like the greatest division of all time, there's a lot of football left to be played, is all I'm going to say, because we saw the AFC North last year. All 4 teams had winning records too, so it's not like this has never been done before. People are acting like, now they're looking fantastic, but the idea that all of these teams are going to keep this up, they're all going to start beating each other up in a matter of time here. They all got to play each other. So all the NFC North fans that are acting like this is, we're all going to make, calm down. A lot of football left to be played.
I think only, if I remember correctly, I think the only divisional game in the NFC North was when the Packers played the Vikings like 2 weeks ago.
It's the only one.
So there's still, the Packers still have 5. All the other teams probably still have 6. So there's still, like I said, there's a lot of we call, I guess, lack of a better phrase, cannibalization.
Yes.
That's going to occur where we're going to start beating up on each other in a sense. So and then obviously playing, team goes on, or season goes on, attrition and stuff as well. But anyway, let's move on over to the night games. Going to the Sunday night game. This one did not have as much fireworks as definitely I expected, but nonetheless, I think the result we were not shocked by, as the Bengals take care of business, beating the Giants 17-7 here. What were your thoughts here in regards to the Bengals just doing enough to get the win here?
They definitely needed it. If I'm a Bengals fan, I don't feel confident about this one. It's the same thing I said when Dallas beat the Giants. I don't think the Giants are a good football team, and the fact that it wasn't as encouraging as maybe you'd want it to be is bad. The run game didn't really do anything for them until Chase Brown got that 30-yard run for the touchdown. He kind of burst through the line. So I can't sit here and hype up Chase Brown like I have the past few weeks. I mean, sure, on paper, after that run, it looks a lot better. But previously, he had like 9 carries for 33 yards, which is not.
Well,
great.
Then like the run beforehand, he almost fumbled. He did fumble, but it went out of bounds. That was almost bad too, because that could have literally flipped the game on its head.
Yeah, sorry, 9 carries for 23 yards, not 33, 23 yards, and then that fumble thing there, and which to Zach Moss too. He lost a fumble earlier in the game, so like the run game didn't really do anything for them. Jamar Chase and T Higgins were good, but the passing attack didn't necessarily like light the world on fire. I don't know. Like I can't really criticize the Bengals for the most part, outside of the fact that I just think they probably should have scored more in this one because the Giants, they'll give you opportunities, and they weren't scoring the ball, they weren't moving the ball. So I don't know. It felt like with how their defense was constantly getting the ball back, including that interception in the red zone. It seems like the Bengals should have maybe done a little bit better, but ultimately you got the win, and you're 2-4 now, and you try to build momentum on it and go from here. So in the NFL, a win's a win, no style points like in college. So it's just one of those things where, like I felt when the Cowboys beat the Giants 20-5 or 20-15, I just didn't feel super confident that against when they play the better competition that they're gonna play well. And I mean, the Bengals went toe to toe with the Ravens, but who knows? We'll see.
And that's we always talk about divisional games are different in
Yeah.
regards to that. There's a familiarity there and all that goes with it. Only thing a couple things I want to note, like obviously shout out Tyrone Tracy Jr. I think he's kind of showing to be at least a solid playmaker. I'm not saying he's gonna be a stud, but he's been contributing the past 2 weeks. So it could be a spark for them going forward for the Giants. But I mean, and I will say too, in regards to their defense and giving the Bengals issues, shout out to their edge rushers. I mean, Brian Burns had a sack. Dexter Lawrence was constantly, in the creating issues, and even Azeez Ojulari, he had a couple of sacks filling in for Kayvon Thibodeau. So I mean, there's some positives there, but you can tell this was a game too where they really missed a Malik Neighbors because I mean, Darius Slayton was their main target, and as good as he is, I think we've seen the past 2 weeks, he can get numbers, but for the most part, he's kind of more of a role guy. Same with like Wan'Dale Robinson. I think they're both like kind of like a 2/3, as we saw, because a couple key moments where the Bengals were able to man up, and we've seen that their defense has been suspect this year, but the Giants weren't able to take advantage. They're Slayton there's a couple throws too that Daniel Jones isn't perfect, and we already. And hopefully everyone should know that by now, but we already know that he's kind of average in that average mid area. So it's no shocker that a couple of those throws, maybe he wanted to have back. I know there's that one on that crosser where I think Slayton did have a kind of a step, but the throw was a little bit behind. And I believe it was my boy DJ Turner that got the deflection. It was like a fourth down too. They had a couple of fourth down opportunities that just, they just didn't convert. And as we saw how close the game was towards the end, that kind of was, I guess, the game in itself in regards to that. Some of those were, big moments. So, shout out to the Bengals for just doing enough, staying alive. That's all they can do going forward as they go to 2-4. While the Giants, they followed 2-4 as well. Tough loss at home, 0-3 at home. The Giants, oddly enough, and oddly, the Bengals have only won on the road. They're 2-1 on the road. So, we'll see if those trends continue or whatnot. But let's move on to the Monday night game. We'll talk about the game first and mention the moves that both these teams made, ironically. As the Buffalo Bills, they survive against the Jets 23-20. In what was actually a pretty good and close game. What were your thoughts here in regards to the game itself?
The Bills, I mean, they came out on top. They played a good defensive game. Now, I say that, and yet this was kind of the first time that it felt like the Jets' offense was able to get going. But the reason I say it was a good defensive game is because they did limit a lot of these like long drives the Jets were able to have to relegating them to field goals. And so that was solid from them. Great game from the Jets offensively. Breece Hall got going. Allen Lazard had a great day. Garrett Wilson had a great day. That's what you want to see if you are, a Jets fan, hoping that this team can finally get it together, because it's been ugly. It has been ugly. It has been tough, for some of these weeks, and this is kind of the first time that they all got going. Because, like, for example, when Breece Hall was having his good performances, Garrett Wilson wasn't really doing anything, and then when you had Garrett Wilson going off last week, Breece Hall didn't do anything. So it was good to see them both going. And so that was solid for the Jets. And for the Bills, you just got reinforcements. Actually, both these teams actually just got reinforcements. So I'm sure we'll talk about that. But the fact that the Bills were able to come away with a win here despite not having James Cook, I think was huge. Ray Davis was huge in relief. Josh Allen continues to cook, had a great game. And that was without really, like, Khalil Shakir having to do a whole lot. So I don't know. I think it was a good game from both teams, honestly. And although the Jets did come out with a loss, and they're 2-4, you're bringing in Devontae Adams. I think there's encouragement now that it feels like the offense is finally getting on the same page. And you try to bounce back after this. And for the Bills, that's a big divisional win. So
Yeah. I will say Jets probably should have won this game. And honestly, everyone's kind of flaming Mike Williams and such. Greg Zerline's kind of flying under the radar because
yeah,
he's had a couple. He missed the kick against Denver. Like a couple kicks go his way, and they may be 4-2 as opposed to 2-4. And who knows? Maybe Saul is still there. I don't know. But regardless, in regards to this one, I will say I felt like the Jets had a very good opening. We talk about their script, how they have the first or 20 where the plays are, they have the game plan specific plays that they like to open up with. It seemed like the Jets, they're doing the things that I was wanting to. We saw early on, like running under, not under center, but under pistol, having multiple tight ends, doing some stuff off play action. They had some creative plays we saw. They got the offense going early. But it felt like really after the first half, they definitely stagnated for the most part and went back, kind of reverted back to the things that I hated, which was, okay, now it's just Rodgers. He's going to, just try to dissect you with his quick throws to Garrett Wilson or Lazard or dump downs to Brees Hall, and it just obviously didn't have the same effect. Granted, they still had opportunities, like we mentioned. It's although boosted a little bit by some of the calls. I know the officiating was not great this game, especially early on. Some of the later calls I didn't mind, but anyway, and yeah, just unfortunate too, the Rodgers pick for me fantasy wise, but also I don't know how you feel. I don't know if you need to throw Mike Williams under the bus that badly. I know, he maybe didn't run the right route, but he was still there, and unfortunately he slipped. Blame the lame turf at MetLife maybe, because maybe if he doesn't slip, obviously we know how big Mike Williams is. I'm assuming that I forget who got the pick. I'm trying to remember now. Taron Johnson, isn't able to just run up and scoop that, or not scoop it, but run up and get it, get that interception. Maybe Mike Williams is likely to box him out, or at least it's incomplete as opposed to just a turnover. But I guess we can talk about, one more point before we talk about, you mentioned Ray Davis, and yeah, he was a big pleasant surprise because I was very worried. I was like, man, who's going to be the other playmaker besides Josh Allen? And it was Ray Davis. Even he caught that one crazy catch too, where I'm sure you saw they threw it out a bunch of times with like the Manning cast where, Allen's escaping to the right, almost gets a safety too, and just throws a dime 40 yards downfield to Ray Davis. So I guess we'll talk about the transactions though. We'll do it in order. First, Devontae Adams gets traded to the Jets for a conditional third. It can be a second if they make, I think, the Super Bowl, and or he gets, or if he gets on a first or second team All Pro, Devontae. So we'll see about that. I think the Bills the Bills traded for Amari Cooper. I'm trying to remember that compensation. Was it a third round pick? I know it was like Amari and like a sixth for like a third and like a couple of sevenths, I think was the trade.
I can't remember the details.
I can't remember really. It's not that important, but regardless, what were your thoughts on
What you said
these
was
moves?
correct. It was Cooper and a 2025 sixth round pick for a 2025 third round pick and a seventh rounder in 2026.
Okay, so granted, I think Cooper. I'm guessing Cooper also on expiring deal and older, of course. So, what were your thoughts though on these moves? Obviously, both these teams, wanting to try to take advantage and a hold of this division.
I think it's a good trade for both sides. Devontae Adams, they needed to get rid of him, and the conditional stuff, getting a second for the Raiders, I like that. Because I think that his ceiling for his price tag is limited based on the fact that he is 31. And he gets to go to a situation he wants to. So I think it's good for both teams, both sides. I like it for the Jets. Be aggressive. If you want to get back in this division, you got to get the offense going. And maybe the attention Devontae will free up Garrett Wilson and Brees Hall and some of these other guys to just really do their thing. And so you already have a good defense. Try and make the offense as good as you can. So I like that aggressiveness from the Jets. For the Bills, I think it's great as well. They certainly needed someone to be a consistent playmaker on the outside because we know you got Shakir. We know you've got Dalton Kincaid, and these guys can do good stuff over the middle. James Cook is a good playmaker, but Keon Coleman feels like he's good for one or two catches a game at this point, whether that be scheme or his readiness or whatever. And he can make some explosive plays, but I think you need that reliable go-to option, and Cooper can be that guy. So I I like that. I think he can fit in nicely and kind of fill the gap that Stephon Diggs left. So I think this is a good decision from both teams, and I think for the Bills specifically, because obviously for the Jets, it's pretty obvious. It was self-explanatory. You got to get a guy like Devontae, but for the Bills, I think this is very much a move that they're thinking about late in the season, when we're having to go up against the Chiefs, when we're having to go up against a lot of the top teams, the Ravens in the playoffs. We got to have options, and Amari Cooper just gives you another one because right now it didn't feel like they had some other ones, especially after that Ravens game where they got completely blown out with no Shakir and they just couldn't do anything offensively, and James Cook was banged up. So, obviously you want James Cook, you want Khalil Shakir to be healthy there, but you needed a little bit more because it doesn't feel like Kincaid or Shakir is truly like elevated to alpha status. So I think both teams came out on top here.
Yeah, honestly, I like a little bit more for the Bills. I think because, like you mentioned, like gives them a true number one, and or at least guy that can be a number one. And like you said, you can do. I mean, Amari can do a little bit of everything, and I think that helps too in regards to that. I like it for the Jets. Obviously, there's a chemistry there with Rodgers. I'm not trying to be too pessimistic, but I do worry. This is a worry, and I'm going to reiterate this that because they have Devontae. Oh, now they got Devontae, Garrett Wilson, Alan Lazard, and Brees. That they're going to go back to the Aaron Rodgers offense, like I mentioned, which may work a little more often now that you have another threat in Devontae Adams. But I just worry that it's going to be a little bit better, but not good enough against, like you said, some of the elite teams that you're referencing that are going to be, or elite defenses that are going to be all over the simple West Coast slants and quick throws and all that, and over just all over some of those Rodgers. It's not really Aaron Rodgers concepts, but it's like mostly West Coast stuff. Anyway, but who knows? Maybe regardless, I'm being nitpicky that overall, though, I think obviously, yes, it's good for the Jets. Even if they go back to that, it still makes them more dangerous. Just giving Rodgers another guy that he can depend on, another reliable weapon, and like you said, another guy that the defense has to worry about. They did move Garrett Wilson around a bunch last night, so I think that's a very good precursor. So that Garrett can be in the slot at times or on the opposite side, and same with Alan Lazard or even Devontae. But I'm sure it'll be between Lazard and Wilson will be kind of in and out of the slot, and they were pretty effective last night, especially in that. So it'd be interesting to see though how both these offenses, if they can evolve or just this will be a jumping platform for them. But I wouldn't be shocked if the Bills are kind of the one that quote unquote are better after that. But we'll see how it all plays out. Nonetheless, good trade for both sides or for both teams, and that's kind of ironic too. Kudos to the Bills. I want to say last thing too, because I thought they would wait longer, but I'm assuming that they did not want like a Chiefs or another team. Okay, Devontae's off the market. We really got to make sure we get, like you said, get our wide receiver, and hope maybe they're worried that if they waited, the Chiefs or someone else would snag one of their targets that they were looking at. So, we'll see how it all shakes out. The Bills get the win, and they are leading that AFC East now at 4-2. So they do have a leg up going forward. So we'll see if those new additions can help these teams going forward. But anything else you wanted to throw in or mention before we call it there?
That's going to be it. I do wonder if there's going to be any other teams that potentially make some aggressive moves here in the coming weeks as we do approach the trade deadline. But we will definitely see, because at this point it does feel like it's go time when it comes to, are you legit contender or you tossing in it for the year?
And we are getting, I think the trade deadline's at week 8.
Yeah.
Usually it's week 8. So we're going to week 7. So coming up soon. Only one thing I want to add before we go too, I forgot to mention with the Jets, I've been interested to see the Hassan Reddick situation. I know they could use him, but maybe they have to get rid of him. And hey, I'm not sure what, if he wants to go to Detroit or how it fit, but obviously, team, if there was lines to draw, I would draw there. Be like, hey, like Detroit, I would be calling for Hassan Reddick.
The tough part is I'm pretty sure Hassan will only play if he gets paid what he wants. Like, that's the issue.
So that's
he will play for the Jets.
and that was supposed to happen when he got traded to the Jets from Philly. That's why he wanted out of Philly. And then this whole fiat. And I'm not going to take sides, organization, or player, who knows what. But it'd be interesting to see, because he did get new representation. So in theory, I guess what the reports are saying is that like something's the ball doesn't get moving. Either he's going to probably get his deal, stay with the Jets, play, or go elsewhere, or whatnot. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, like you mentioned, and if any other teams or put guys on the block and such. But other than that, that'll do it for us. We'll be back later in the week to make our week 7 picks against the spread / bets. And yeah, as always, feel free to like, comment, rate, subscribe, etc. That'll do it for me and John. See you all next time. Adios.